All right, so today we're diving into a story where things got, well, complicated. You've got a humanitarian mission that gets all tangled up in international politics and some really serious personal controversy. And it all revolves around this Gaza-bound flotilla and one of its top leaders. So this mission, right, it was supposed to be all about shining a spotlight on a humanitarian crisis. But it ended up making headlines for something else entirely. So what's the real story here? What went down? Let's get into it, breaking down exactly what our source material reports. Okay, so where did all this controversy even begin? Well, it kicked off with a single news report that honestly cast a pretty big shadow over the whole mission. So, according to our source, it was an exclusive from the New York Post that first dropped this bombshell. The report claimed that while they were getting ready for the trip, a really serious accusation of sexual misconduct popped up from inside the organization itself, and it was aimed right at one of their key leaders. Right, so who exactly is this person at the center of it all? Let's take a look at the name that the report brings up. The person named in the reporting is Thiago Ávila. And, he wasn't just some random volunteer. He was identified as a senior leader, an organizer. That means he was in a major position of responsibility for this whole thing. Now, with any big allegation like this, you've got two sides to the coin, right? So let's see how the source material lays out the claim versus the response. And the contrast here is pretty stark. On one hand, you have this very serious accusation of sexual misconduct, and on the other, you have Enola completely denying it. He apparently told the New York Post that the claims were just false, and get this, he said an internal ethics committee had already looked into it and decided it was a smear campaign. And here it is, straight from the source, his own words. He's basically framing this whole thing not as something he did wrong, but as a politically motivated attack. He claims he just had a comradely relationship with the people accusing him. Okay, so from there, the reporting kind of zooms out a bit. It starts digging into Ayla's public statements and his past affiliations, to give us a bigger picture of the person at the heart of all this. So it's not just about these immediate allegations. The source also reports on his public record, things like speeches and social media posts where he's shown support for different political and military figures over in the Middle East. And this is where it gets pretty interesting. Check out the specific language that was reported. Achilla is quoted calling the late Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, a figure who shines in the history of revolutions. The source also mentions he said he was honored to have been at Nasrallah's funeral. And the reporting doesn't stop there. Here's another example. This quote shows Ávila giving condolences after the death of the late Iranian president Ibrahim Raisi. And apparently this was posted on his own social media. And just to round all this out, the source points to two more things. Ávila apparently spoke in support of the IRGC, that's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and there's a recording where he's reportedly heard chanting, "Death to America, death to Israel." All right, let's pull back from Thiago Ávila for a second and look at the bigger picture again, the flotilla's mission itself and some of the heat it was getting. First off, let's just talk about how big this operation was supposed to be. The New York Post reports that the flotilla was trying to raise a lot of money for this trip. We're talking almost $5 million. That number alone kind of tells you how high the stakes were. But yeah, not everyone was on board with the idea. The source points out that criticism was coming from a few different places. For instance, some Palestinians in Gaza were quoted saying, "Hey, that money would be better if you just donated it directly instead of, throwing it into the sea." And then from an Israeli point of view, a past flotilla was brushed off as just a self-indulgent PR stunt, with claims that it barely had any real aid on it. And that really leaves us with a big final question, doesn't it? What started out as a story about a humanitarian mission totally shifted to be about the history and alleged actions of just one of its leaders. It makes you wonder, about activism in general. When the person delivering the message becomes the main story, what happens to the message itself?